Stream is live.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? How's everyone doing tonight? I am wondering if this is actually working correctly or not. Okay, well, it's Dr. Qureshi here, here from Towson, Maryland at Umid Center for Healing Relationships. And we are here for our first I Choose a series.
Yes,
How
I'm
exciting!
Yeah.
How exciting is that? So, as you guys know, we talked about this last year. We discussed Dr. Tanya, Deanna, and I discussed the new series that we were going to start this year in January, right? So here we are. It's January 14, 2025, and we are here. I'm your host, Dr. Misbah Qureshi, and you are looking at my new co-host, Deanna. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for asking me to co-host this with you. I'm
Yeah,
so excited for this.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the topic is very, very much needed, obviously, right? So one of the things that I want to do is, just start off with some brief introduction of ourselves and the work that we've been doing as clinical experts, and then we'll get into talking about the topic of the night, which is the path to relationship fulfillment. I'm very excited about this topic. As you guys all know, we've been talking about relationships and the significance of relationships throughout our I Choose Me series last year, right? So this is just an added addition to what we're going to do this year. So I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that. So I don't think I need too much of an introduction because you guys are familiar with me from I Choose Me. But for those of you that are new to this live, event, I am a trained marriage and family therapist at heart. And I consider myself as a healer, a relational trauma expert, and really a mental health professional that helps you achieve your goals of wellness. And wellness can come in many different shapes and forms. So we will definitely talk about that. I have a private practice here in Maryland, a group practice. We specialize in children and families. So I have the pleasure of working with individuals on an individual level, parents, children. Couples is my thing right now. Somehow I'm attracting a lot of couples these days. The referrals just keep coming in. But it's amazing because it just shows that people actually want to do the work to make their relationships better. And that's what I Choose Us is about. So we provide virtual services. I have an amazing office here. You can probably see some of the colors in the background, and I have a great team. And I had the pleasure of meeting my co-host virtually through our friends. So I am very honored to be here with Deanna tonight. So go ahead, Deanna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Deanna Pelly, and I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor practicing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have about 8 years of clinical experience. I work with a lot of just adults. I don't treat families or couples actually in my practice. I work with adults only, adults and adolescents, I should say. But I have a lot of experience working with trauma. I do a lot of long-term therapy with trauma victims, grief and loss work, anxiety and depression. Those are many of the things that I see in my practice. And again, I do a lot of long-term work. So I've worked with people for 5 and 6 years in my practice. I would consider myself the human emotion expert. I love to talk about feelings. I think it's fun. I think it's really important. It's kind of the soul of who we are in many ways. And so that's something that I really enjoy. For those who are interested or like think about psychology theories or any of those things. Most of my clinical training has been in psychodynamic and psychoanalytic work. It's a real depth-based approach, looking at the unconscious and attachment, how early attachment and our relationships early in our life kind of set the stage for how we form as human beings in the world. And so that's the stuff that I love to puzzle out with people in my private practice, and I love it. I think it's meaningful work. I think you can relate. It's like such an honor to be invited into people's lives and experiences the way that we are, and get to form really, again, with your relationships. I mean, is there anything more significant than the therapeutic relationship? It's the foundation for so much healing that takes place. And so I'm excited to be here and to do this year with you. It's 2025, and we get to talk about the I Choose Us, and I think this is going to be really exciting. We have so many great topics coming down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a better colleague to start this series with than you, Deanna. And I think I had shared this connection with you in our last LinkedIn event when we did our last series of I Choose Me. I felt connected when you talked about relationship and the significance of relationships, right? And I was like, yep, that's the person I want to stay connected to. That's the person that I would love to collaborate with, because we're speaking the same language, right? So we haven't met in person, for those of you guys that don't know, but it seems like we've known each other for a long time, and we understand each other's, again, language. We understand the work that we're doing, but also how we really fit in as healers and as therapists in the work that we're doing.
Absolutely.
So with that, we have a great episode for you guys today. So the topic that we decided that we were going to start off with today was the path to relationship fulfillment. What better topic to talk about, right? The path to relationship fulfillment. It sounds like it could be easy answers, right? Obviously, we know, right? We know what we want in relationships, but when it actually transpires in relationships day in and day out, it becomes very complicated. So one of the things we wanted to do today was obviously kind of talk a little bit about what I Choose Me series did previously and how it connects with I Choose Us. So again, for those of you that have the opportunity to participate in I Choose Me, we covered a lot of different topics. We covered honoring our grief. We covered from conflict to connection. We've talked about self-love. We've talked about our inner child wounds and how you reconnect with them. We've talked about relational traumas, right? Everything that we discussed in I Choose Me stemmed off of my experiences as a clinician, as a family therapist, relational expert, on how difficult it is to choose ourselves. We find ourselves in so many relationships, so many relational situations, right? Whether it's family members, whether it's colleagues, co-workers, aunts, uncles, siblings, parents, right? We're always finding ourselves in relational dilemmas where we have to either pick ourselves and our own sanity or do the right thing. And what does the right thing mean? The right thing looks different for different cultures, right? From different people. But often we as human beings, we are trained and socialized to make sacrifices. Think about any culture, right? Or any one person who would ever tell you you shouldn't make a sacrifice. It's very rare. Most people are like, yeah, man, you got to sacrifice things. You got to make it, right? It's okay. Be selfless, right? So the I Choose Me series came from the challenges that I saw in my clinical work on how hard it was to honor ourselves while we stayed committed in our relationships. So this year, we decided we were going to switch it up a little bit, because it is as significant as it is to choose ourselves. It's also significant to choose us. And what do we mean by I choose us? It means I choose me and you. In this moment, every other Tuesday at 7 p.m., I chose Deanna to spend my hour with on LinkedIn. I chose this relationship because of its value to me and what I saw the connection to be. The reality is we can't live without relationships, right? As my mom would say, we come into this world alone, we leave alone, yet we can't live alone. So yes, we can honor ourselves, yet it's also important to honor our relationships as well. And that's where I Choose Us series comes in. So with that, Deanna, do you want to talk a little bit about our topic, the path to relationship fulfillment? I think we had a question to propose to the audience.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. Like, I want to know from people, what does relationship fulfillment mean to you? When you think about that, what comes to your mind when you think about relationship fulfillment?
That's a really good question. What is relationship fulfillment? You guys, you can type away in the boxes and hopefully we will get your answers. Show. Deanna, are you able to see some of these
let me see here.
Text messages?
Yeah, actually I can see the chat. Hi, Christy. It's good to see you here.
Okay.
Yes, and I can see the chat and I can see what you're putting up under the screen. Hi, Jackie.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Jackie. So the question that we're proposing is, what is relationship fulfillment?
Like, what does that mean to you?
Yep. I am not getting any answers. I don't know if it's because I can't see everybody that may be logged on. So I do want to say, guys, I did something really new this year. So I'm just going to put it out there. So this is my first live stream on StreamYard. Okay. And I am streaming on Instagram and YouTube channel and LinkedIn. So I am getting a little savvy with it today. So it is definitely a learning curve, but I learned a new skill this year.
Yeah.
Signing up for it and, kind of like making this work. So if there's any technical difficulties, I'm going to be like, oh my God.
I think it's working. I see an answer that came through. Are you
Absolutely. Okay. So Jackie wrote, so relationship fulfillment, that you are happy and satisfied with whatever relationship you are in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In a nutshell, yes, you're happy in it and you're satisfied in it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, when I think about relationship fulfillment, like thinking across the board too, it can mean partner relationship, but what about your friendships? What about other significant relationships that you have in your life? Because we really are so relational, and there's relationships in every facet of our life. I mean, even I've built, I feel like a twice yearly cordial friendly relationship with my dental hygienist. We always have a lot to talk about twice a year. It's still a relationship that's built, even though it's in a professional context and I only go twice a year to the dentist. But relationships are happening in so many facets and in so many ways in our lives.
Yeah, and that level of fulfillment is different, right? They meet your needs
Absolutely.
on a
Mhm.
different way.
100%. They absolutely do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They absolutely do meet your needs in a different way. For sure.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we can talk about the areas that we picked, right? So, as we, as relationship healers, relationship experts, emotional experts, one of the things that, Deanna and I will do and are doing is, figuring out what areas we want to highlight for
Mhm.
every session that we have. And for this one, we identified 4 different areas of relationship fulfillment that we both believe are very significant and important.
Mhm.
And of course, it's not end all be all. Yet, if you can narrow in on these 4 areas and find some balance in your relationships, and it does not matter what type of relationship it is, whether it's a sibling relationship, whether it's a parent child relationship, whether it's a friendship, romantic relationship, right? If you can balance these areas and you score high in these areas in your relationship with that significant person, other person, you can safely say that it's a healthy relationship and it's fulfilling. Okay. Of course, it was not easy. Definitely not easy. Yet, I'm hoping that it makes sense to you guys because these areas are very significant. So, with that, I am going to talk about the first one. I wonder if we have a note taker today, like we did last time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, our first area that Deanna and I highlighted, and there is no significance in like 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are just 4 areas, and we're just talking about them in numbers, right? So, the first one that I want to start off by is honoring authenticity. Okay. So I want you to listen to that and let's deconstruct it while I'm typing it up for you guys. Okay. So, what is authenticity? One will say. We throw around this word a lot, right? I hear it all the time
Mhm.
nowadays.
Mhm.
Authenticity and vulnerability.
Mhm.
Okay. Those are the 2 words of the many that people are using, yet I wonder if they know
Hmm.
um, the level of deep rootedness it entails, right?
Mhm.
So, in
Mhm.
simplest terms, authenticity is what in general? It's being able to be yourself openly, right? To be able to be free to move around in this world the way that you are,
Mhm.
um, to feel unjudged by who you are, to be able to show up in spaces feeling proud of yourself, right? Authenticity just means rawly. To me, it's just being raw, right? Deanna, what would you add to that?
I think when I think about authenticity, like, well, what comes to my mind because we're talking about relationships are the relationships where I feel like I can be authentically myself and I'm loved and that's valued. Who I am is valued as a human. I think it's a gift to be able to show up as we are without feeling like we have to alter ourselves in some way to meet someone else's needs. If I can show up in a relationship as I genuinely am, with my quirks, and I have plenty of them, both good and bad. But if I can
Mhm.
bring those things and genuinely, I think it also, when I think about the authenticity, is like being able to be authentic with my reactions to something, saying, I don't like something, or I like something, or whatever the case may be in a relationship, when I can genuinely bring forth my opinion. It's a gift to be able to do that in a relationship, I think, regardless of the nature of the relationship. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And I think that it's a challenge in relationships.
Absolutely.
And it's a challenge in many different ways. And depending on what cultural background you come from, people aren't even given the permission to be their authentic selves.
Hmm.
We spend a lot of our life um, showing up with masks on.
Hmm.
And that's what we're taught from a very young age. Hey, when you go to school, this is how you dress, right? When you go to church or the mosque or the synagogue, this is how you dress, right? This is how you talk. When you're going over your uncle and auntie's house, this is what it looks like. This is how you are at home. This is how you are at work, right? We are naturally, from the day that we're born, we are taught that we need to wear different masks. And we're taught what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not over here trying to argue the social learning theory or that you do have to represent a certain way in certain social settings. Absolutely. We have to be respectful of where we are, right? And there are social norms. There just are. We live in a society that has rules, regulations, right? What's defined as appropriate, what's not. But when we talk about authenticity, those are the things that are related to our innate self and our core identities. Those that authenticity is not about what you wear and how you speak or what kind of food you eat, right? It's about being yourself and all of yourself consistently in different social settings. So, a big example, like for me, would be, and I realized this as time went on, is kind of just giving you a professional example, not a personal one. I'm a social justice advocate. Okay. Whenever there's discussions about any injustice, I'm going to jump in and advocate, no matter what setting it is. And sometimes people may feel like that conversation should not be had, or maybe I was too bold and too vocal about it. But that's who I am. That's a value for me. So I cannot sit there in any setting when there is a conversation that's happening that is unjust and just sit there, because that goes against my authentic self. So when I think about authenticity, I'm thinking about values too, right? Your personality traits. Like, I don't know, Deanna, give me an example of your authentic self.
Well, actually, one thing really quick that was coming to my mind as you were talking about that, right? Like you're going to advocate, you're going to do this, is like you know yourself well. Being able to be your authentic self requires knowing yourself well. Even what you were saying about, you're right. We live it, regardless of kind of our backgrounds. We have different masks that we are taught to wear in different settings. And in one of the downfalls, I think that sometimes can happen in development is that we aren't empowered to learn who we are, just who we should be in various settings. And I think that as you were sharing that, I thought, wow, well, I'm so happy for you that you have this, because you know who you are and you can bring that forward in a very authentic way. And I think that's so powerful when we're talking about authenticity and bringing your authentic self to a relationship. In any context. So much so that I'm going to be honest with you. You asked me a question. I already forgot the question because I was thinking about that thought. What did you just ask me before I went off on this side tangent?
Your authentic self. What's authentically you? I think you had mentioned something about emotions last time, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so that was another example I was thinking too. Like, I'm a very vulnerable person.
Yeah, same.
The
Mhm.
big V is always there.
As a
Okay,
therapist,
I have
vulnerability. It's the
I
best.
have no problem being vulnerable. That's just me, okay?
Ah,
So that's
I'm
authentically me.
I relate to that. As a therapist, I love vulnerability in and out of the therapy space. And I think it deepens and enlivens so many of the relationships I have. Authentically beyond that, I have like what I think is a funny sense of humor because I have it and it's mine. I love being able to bring my sense of humor forward. And I do so in basically every facet of my life, including actually the therapy space. Like I think there can be space to have fun in therapy treatment. Sometimes I think people think that like people who aren't therapists assume that therapists are just trauma dumped on all day long,
Mhm.
and that's not my experience at all. You build very authentic relationships with people. A way that I bring myself forward authentically is by way of humor. I like to laugh, I like to have fun, I like to have a good time, and that's really really important to me. And similar to you, actually, I have some social justice issues that I care very strongly about, and I'm very I will speak up about them in a way that I believe is professional and important. But I will speak up about them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. So with that, we definitely want to move on to the next area. So in a nutshell, what honoring authenticity means is that when we're talking about I choose us and relationship fulfillment, it's being able to be yourself in a relationship and feeling accepted.
Mhm.
That's what it means. You can let your hair down. You're not going to feel judged by your loved one, right? Your partner. You can laugh and giggle. You guys will get the same jokes, right? They're not asking you to change, right? Um, and you are allowed the freedom to be freely you. And that's what makes you amazing.
Mhm.
And when you feel authentically yourself, and you're honoring it for both parties, you're going to have a sense of fulfillment because you are not thinking about changing,
Mhm.
thinking about how I'm going to show up, right? So, and I can tell you guys stories about me and how I have been told I need to move in certain ways. And I'm like, not working for me. I'm sorry. Bye bye. See you later. So, the world definitely tells you need to change because it may not fit in the paradigm that we're living in. But honoring authenticity is very, very important for relationship fulfillment.
Mhm.
All right. So, Deanna, you want to take the next one?
I do. I do. We've already talked about how much I love talking about feelings and emotions. And so, what I'm going to be talking about is the emotional currency that runs in relationships. I think if there was one thing I could choose as a therapist for the whole world to understand, it would be that you cannot go through life without feeling feelings, which also includes sometimes feeling bad. This will happen, that you will not always feel good all of the time. It's just not possible.
Mhm.
And so I love talking about feelings and emotions. And I think when we think about a relationship, two people, there is an emotional currency that runs in our relationships. We feel love and we feel all kinds of things in relationship that runs the whole gamut. We can feel love and we can feel excitement about and towards someone. We can also feel hurt by someone, anger towards someone, jealousy. All of these things exist and manifest in our relationships. And for me, relationships, and this is not something that you have to adopt. This is just how I think about relationships. The relationships that I have in my life that have the most depth and the most meaning to me, I feel like I'm a compass and I orient towards those relationships. They're my north, if you will, these different relationships that I have. And that's just kind of how I think of it in my mind. And one of the people I talk about all the time, I talk about whenever I'm on any sort of live or in any setting really, is my sister. I have a sister who lives in Virginia. I live in Minneapolis, and she is without a doubt my best friend in this whole world. I
Mhm.
am fortunate to have such a wonderful relationship with her. She is so wonderful. She's a lot like me, but kind of quieter. But she also has a similar sense of humor. She's a ton of fun, and she knows me really well because I'm authentic with her. I bring forth my very real self, and she does so with me. But there's not a facet of my mind or my emotional experience that I feel like I cannot take to her because she makes space for it. whether it's good or whether it's bad. She's got and she's able to hold space for that. And I love that. She celebrates with me harder than anyone else on this planet. And she will worry with me and feel sad with me in those times that those things arise. And that has strengthened our relationship tenfold to be able to do that. And we've always been close, but it's gotten stronger over time. And bringing forth emotional vulnerability, actually, and allowing the emotional currency to run has strengthened our relationship, perhaps more than anything else. And so that's something that's, I think, is so important. And as a therapist, I live for feeling in the therapy room and in the relationship that I form with the people that I treat. There's a lot of emotions that come up. And when there's space to talk about them and to think about them together, it really deepens and enlivens the relationship, and it enlivens the treatment. I think, unfortunately, we live in a society that really rewards feeling good above all else. And I love feeling good. It's great. I love it when it's real. And that's what I tell people all the time is like, if you're feeling good and that is real, let's live in that. But if it's not real in this moment, let's not pretend like it is. Let's get to what's real and work with that, and start there. And then we can move into other things. I'm curious what you're thinking as I've just kind of monologued here for a few minutes.
No, I'm thinking exactly where you're thinking around realness, but also, like, for me, as I'm listening to you, the relational dynamics around being able to show vulnerability and take in all the good and bad emotions, right? So I think that when we talk about relationship, let's just say a romantic relationship, right? In the beginning, everything is great. We're feeling excited. We're feeling, a little bit of nervousness. We get the butterflies. We're happy. And we're like in La La Land, basically, right? But as soon as things get tough, people start distancing away, which to me is a sign of not having emotional currency, right? But also not necessarily knowing that, not being able to really deal with emotions.
Yeah.
Right? Someone that has a certain level of emotional intelligence and has done the work will be able to create space for you to honor your emotions.
Yes.
And that's what also ties back into authenticity, right? Like, I should be able to let my hair down if I'm having a stressful day. I should be able to come home and honor my emotions. And my emotions are embraced by my relationships versus being dismissed.
Yes. 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 And like how important in relationships to be able to allow your partner to feel how they're feeling about whatever without talking them out of it. I had an experience probably about a year and a half ago with a friend of mine from college. She's a very, very close friend of mine. I will say, I think, I don't know if you feel this way, but like as a therapist, I think sometimes I'm maybe more particular about the friends that I have or the people that I'm willing to be vulnerable with. And those are people that I know can handle it and that can be vulnerable back with me. There's space again for that emotional currency to run. And we share good and bad. And so this is a friend of mine who I met in college. We've been friends for many years, and she's just very, I love her very much. I'm grateful for her friendship. And so about a year and a half ago, I was actually over dropping off something at her house. Her husband and daughter were gone, and we were just chatting. And she was telling me about that week. She had a very scary medical incident. She lost feeling on one side of her body. It was very terrifying, this like tingling feeling that had happened. And I won't go into the nitty gritty and all the details, but nonetheless, she was going to be having a bunch of medical tests done. And she said to me, after being quiet, she said to me, "I'm scared." And I simply responded and said, "Me too." I didn't even think about it. That's what I said, because I was. That's what I'm talking about, where there was like an emotional currency that was running. Is like I felt afraid for my friend who I love very much, who means very much to me. We have a wonderful friendship. She's an excellent, just shows up very strong in my life. And I was afraid for her because I was, and we just sat and the fear just existed. I couldn't, there wasn't anything to say to make that go away. She needed to have these tests done and we needed to know what was going on in order for to know, what was going to happen next. What did this mean? I'm happy to report that she is well, but she, there was a fear that existed there and we just simply shared in that. That's a moment where that felt scary. It felt, and yet I have another friend from college we're kind of a trio, again, another kind of ride or die. And I remember when I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. And she was so excited. She's teared up. And like, again, this excitement and this joy that brings this like emotional currency that exists in the relationship. These strengthen the relationships that I have, and they are very deep and very meaningful, at the risk of sounding like a broken record. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like when we can bring forward those parts of ourselves and this part of our human experience, it's very healing, actually, I think, in a lot of ways, and allows for so much growth and depth in a relationship.
Yeah. I hear you, and I'm thinking, man, I wish a lot more people can actually name their emotions.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I think to have emotional currency, obviously there needs to be some level of emotional insight, emotional intelligence. And most of us are not given a class on emotional identification.
No,
right? We're taught the primary emotions. We're taught happy, sad, fear, and anxiety. I think those are like the 4 primary emotions, right? They're all in those categories. The blue, the red, the yellow, and the green. I think those are the colors of emotion. So when as I'm listening to you around emotional currency, like it's so apparent that you have worked in these relationships to be able to show vulnerability, but also to have insight of what's coming up for you. And a lot of people aren't there. So when we talk about relationship fulfillment, one of the biggest challenges around emotional currency and the flow, right, of honoring where we are in the emotional spaces is that we can't recognize what's coming up for us emotionally, let alone our partners or our loved ones. Yeah. So we stay in this mode of defensiveness and guardedness, which in itself also translates to anxiety, depression, like, right? Our body's holding on to it, anger, rage. So the emotions that we really are able to express are anger, rage, frustration, right? So fulfillment around emotional currency in relationship is really about doing the work you need to do to manage your emotions, understand them, but then also create space for your loved ones and their emotions to exist. Because naturally, as human beings, when a friend comes to us or a loved one and says, I'm scared, you get into the solution focused mode, right? You want to help them get rid of that emotion.
Yes, you do. Yeah, you do. People,
but you can't.
It's hard to tolerate. It's hard to sit with fear. It's hard. And I think too, like what you were saying is like, I don't know if you see this in your practice, but one thing I see a lot is that people associate feeling bad with being bad. Like somehow if I feel bad, I am bad. Feeling bad doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. You're not bad or somehow wrong for feeling however you feel. Doesn't matter. You just how you feel, but you're not bad for it. You're not bad for feeling bad. You're not bad or weak for feeling afraid. Yeah. Sometimes you feel afraid. That's what happens.
Because I don't think society allows us to experience emotions at our raw core. And that's what translates into authenticity again, right? So if we tie both of these together, honoring authenticity, that means I can be myself. I can feel anxious. I can be less motivated. I can have low energy. I can, be angry, frustrated, whatever the emotion is. It's honoring where we are and helping each other work through those
Mhm.
emotions.
Yeah. And I think
So
it also, we can name it, we're less likely to be mad at someone else for how we're feeling. We're more likely, we're able to take the ownership that we need.
yeah, I think part of the reason why, anger always shows up more frequently is because we can identify what's underneath it.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I always, in terms of like what I see in clinical practice of being bad or feeling bad,
Mhm.
yeah, I do a lot of that work around like making a distinction between like, I am angry, yet I don't have to act angry.
Mhm. Yeah.
The problem isn't that you're feeling angry. The
Mhm.
problem is that your anger is taking over and you're engaging in certain behaviors,
Mhm.
right? You're
Mhm.
allowed to be angry. However, you need to manage your anger and what comes with being angry.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm. So yeah, we do a lot of that work.
We do. Yes. Yes.
So we ready to move on to the third one? So we have honoring authenticity and emotional currency. And number 3 is this is one that is very significant, yet I don't think anybody would think it made the list. Like it's one of those things that we don't really talk about at all. And I chose is what we chose is as number 3 is practicing forgiveness. Okay. And I'm trying to write this for you guys, and my computer is acting funny. So you remember. Okay. So I know that everyone is familiar with forgiveness, right? I know there are people we may have forgiven or think we have forgiven. I know at some point in your life you have heard the statement, I forgive, but I can't forget, right? Um, I think that it's very, very important um, to understand what forgiveness really looks like in healing relationships, right? So, yes, I do agree. I agree that forgiveness can happen, right? It takes work, it takes time, it takes effort, and it can happen, and you may not forget. Yet, in relationships, if we are talking about fulfillment, it's important that we're looking at forgiveness from a different lens. And I'm sure you guys have also heard forgiveness is for me and not for you. So, what I will say to that is forgiveness is for us. Oftentimes, we stay in relationships and we think we have forgiven or we say we have, but we really haven't. And do you know why? It's because the world maybe tells you you need to forgive. Or that's what you've learned to tolerate. Yet for me, forgiveness is a genuine act of letting go to move forward in life. The reality is nobody's perfect. We can't be. Relationships are imperfect. And there are going to be situations in our life where you are going to be hurt. That's because we all are prone to trauma. We make mistakes, we learn from them. And of course, we can all have our own, boundaries around what's forgivable and what's not, right? We also want to take into account safety issues, things like domestic violence and intimate relationships. So there are certain things that should not be forgivable. Yet when you are in a relationship and you're working towards fulfillment, forgiveness is going to happen. It's going to need to happen. And I want to just add that in there. And this is forgiveness not only for someone else, but for yourself. I think one of the hardest things that is to do is forgive ourselves when we have wronged someone or when we have made a mistake. And yes, Brenda Liz said true forgiveness does require letting go. So Deanna, would you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I love this topic. I love all these topics. That's what I'm gonna say about everything, but I really do. I think they're so important. And you're right. Forgiveness is hard. It is really hard to do. And whether you're forgiving yourself or you're forgiving someone else, but it's such an important aspect of repair in relationships. And relationships fracture at times, they crack at times. We're imperfect people. All of us are, who come together in any number of relationships imperfectly. And so hurt happens. Sometimes it happens without even intending to do it. We hurt someone, or sometimes we're mad and we do it on purpose. That happens as well. But being able to say and forgive someone is so significant. It's very important, and it really does deepen and strengthen relationships. It's also important to be able to say and apologize in relationships. That's a part of it, as well as being able to do that. And that's hard. It's uncomfortable. Most of us don't want to do that because it requires admitting that we've done something wrong. It can bring up a lot of feelings of shame and things that are difficult to navigate within our own minds and our own bodies. But it's a significant part of the relationships that we build, and we do mess up. It's impossible to go through life without making mistakes in relationships and in every other facet of our lives. We're going to mess up. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that is a given.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah, it is. In the same way, you can't go through life without feeling bad things sometimes. You can't go through life without messing up. You can't go through life without hurting someone, even if it's someone that you love. It doesn't make you an evil, horrible person. It makes you human. And that's part of our human experience, is needing to offer and receive forgiveness. And it brings up a lot of vulnerability, actually, to do that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was also thinking about accountability and how that ties into forgiveness. One of the things that I see often is many missteps to accountability. There's this preconceived misconception about apologies, which is, I said I'm sorry. What else do you want me to do? I'm like, do you really want me to answer that? Because there's a lot of things you can do. But people just stop there, right? When we look at the steps of forgiveness, that is technically the very basic minimum first step. I am sorry. I apologize for A, B, and C, right? The more important things come after the apology. Accountability isn't just about saying, I messed up, I'm sorry. It's about showing up differently so that you don't make the same mistake again. And showing up consistently different from the mistake that was made. But people forget all of that. It's almost as if, I apologize, you need to get over it. No, that's not how it works.
I think that's when people can't sit with their own uncomfortable feelings about needing to apologize or messing up. It's like, that's a vulnerable place to be in, is to have messed up. It sucks. I've been there. And what you want to do, I think, is be like, I'm sorry. Okay. Like, let it go. but like to really sit with the mistake that we sometimes make, like to be able to sit with that and like reflect about what we need to do in order to move forward and bring ourselves forward in a way that we really want to, which is not hurting the other person. We have to sit with that and allow space for their discomfort. That's like where feeling comes in. That's emotional currency. This is allowing space for the hurt of someone else when you're the one that hurt them.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
No, absolutely. It's that guilt, it's that shame that you're carrying around that you want to get rid of. And until that other person says, okay, I forgive you, you are unsettled. But those are the uncomfortable feelings that form into, courageous conversations and change and connection. Absolutely. So with that, Brenda Liz has a great question, and I think I have the answer to it, or I think I have the answer to it. But Deanna, you let me know too.
Okay.
Asking, how do you differentiate forgiveness versus I am sorry? So my quickest and easiest answer would be forgiveness is a process. I am sorry is an act that starts the process of forgiveness. It is just this one piece of saying, it's a behavior that starts the forgiveness process. Forgiveness in itself, in its entirety, even has stages, and maybe I'll come up. I'm going to Google that, stages of forgiveness. I'm sure they're out there. So maybe we can look into that and maybe even put it on top of our topics for I Choose Us, because it is so important. So that's how I would answer that. Deanna, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I would agree. I think that forgiveness is a process. I think we're even like what you said, looking at the I'm sorry. I think, it's so nuanced based on the relationship or what's happening. But the irritated I'm sorry, let's change the topic is very different than I see how I hurt you. I see how that hurt. I wish I hadn't done that. I apologize for doing that. And here's how I'm going to work to be different. And to not do that is very different than God, I'm so sorry. Those are two very different things that set a whole different path in terms of forgiveness. I think forgiveness can be a little bit easier when we're in the position of when we can see that there's a genuine wanting to change and work and be different, so as not to cause the same hurt over and over again. Those are different aspects to forgiveness. And it is a process. I think when we're hurt, sometimes we have what I would call bracing for impact. We're waiting for the same hurt to happen again sometimes. And it can be a little bit hard to relax in relationships. So I think also when it comes to forgiveness, a part of that is a willingness to have the same conversation around the hurt, having a conversation around it maybe more than one time, depending upon what happens. There's a difference between forgetting to pick up, butter at the grocery store one time versus something that's genuinely really causes an emotional wound in someone. So I hope that helps answer the question. It's so multifaceted, thinking about forgiveness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have about 8 minutes left, so let's get on with the last. You ready to talk about our last?
I am.
Category area?
Yes, I am. I can't believe
ready for this.
8 minutes left. What has happened to the time? Have you noticed this? It's gone by so fast today. But the
always
last,
like that.
The last,
right when we get all spicy and everything, it's almost over.
I know it went so fast. I thought an hour's a long time, and now it's almost over. Okay, so self-awareness is the last topic in terms of relationship fulfillment. I love talking about self-awareness. All of these topics, as I've said, I enjoy talking about them. I think self-awareness is the one of the primary goals in any therapeutic treatment, at least where I'm the therapist, is increasing self-reflective capacity, increasing self-awareness. We're not really taught very well how to think about our own experience, our own feelings, our own minds and desires. And that's a huge part of relationship fulfillment, is being able to know ourselves. I think one of the key facets of knowing yourself is knowing your needs. I remember asking a gentleman when I was in grad school. I was working in college admissions, and he came. This was an older gentleman, probably in his 70s, who came to the campus to visit the bookstore. He was telling me about his wife as I walked into the bookstore. They'd been married for 40, 50 years, and I was like, "Oh man, how'd you do it?" And he said, "If you get to know feelings, you get to know needs. If you're gonna know needs, you have to be able to self-reflect. If you're gonna know your feelings, you have to be able to self-reflect. If you're gonna know what boundaries you need, you have to be able to self-reflect and understand what's going on for you." I think one of the self-reflection, one of the things that can keep us from, or one of the pitfalls that can save us from in relationships is projection. When we're projecting something onto our partner, when we're assuming something, when we're maybe mad at ourselves, and so then we take that out on our partners instead of really thinking about what we're mad at ourselves for. When we're projecting that onto our partner, that becomes a really dangerous space in a relationship. But if I can know that I'm upset with myself or I'm irritated about something going on in my life, and it keeps me from being short and irritable with my partner, what a gift that is in a relationship. If I can know that something's going on with me and I can say to my partner, "Hey, I need space for myself because I've had a really rough day. I'm not angry with you, but I need to take time for myself." That's a huge part of being able to be self-aware, to even advocate for our own needs, helps to bring a ton of fulfillment to relationships and helps avoid unnecessary conflict and hurt.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you said it in such a perfect way. And again, I would reiterate, self-awareness is something that's a challenge for people
Yes.
in so many different
Mhm.
ways. So even if we talk about these the three other categories, right?
Mhm.
A lot of the work that we do in the beginning of therapy, especially with young adults or even older adults, right,
Mhm.
is trying to figure out what their authentic self is and what it really looks like,
Yeah.
right? So how can you have self-awareness when you haven't even figured out what your authentic self is?
Mhm. Yeah. What do you like? What don't you like? What do
Yeah.
you want to do with your free time? What do you enjoy studying in school, or what do you enjoy doing? I mean, who are the people that you enjoy being around and why?
Mhm.
Your boss who irritated you, what happened that they irritated you? What did they trigger inside of you? What was
Mhm.
going on? I mean, all of these things, it can be uncomfortable to sit with our own reality, but it's huge in our relationships, and it's also a key to resilience. Overall resiliency, I believe, is being able to self-reflect.
Yeah. And I'm also looking at the time and I'm like, wait, can I even talk about like the things that I want to add on to with self-awareness? But I have a feeling we're gonna talk more about it next session because we already have the topic. What I will say as we wrap up with self-awareness, for me, again, it is a journey that you're on like forever.
Yeah.
Because we go through so many developmental stages, so many transitions, so many changes in our life that like self-awareness has to be constant in the sense that you're always learning something new about yourself.
Mhm.
And those things can also change as time goes on.
Mhm.
That's what self-awareness is about. So one of the first and foremost things for every person that we see in the therapy room, I think self-awareness is minimally the goal, right? How do you understand yourself? How have you become to be who you are? Why do you move in this world this way? Why is this a trigger and not this? That's all part of self-awareness.
Mhm. It sure
And
is.
when you're talking about relationship fulfillment, it is so important for you to do your trauma work so that you are aware of who you are, where you come from, where you want to go ideally, and how you're showing up in the relationship. Because once you know that or have some idea, and then understanding what your needs, what your values are, why you're moving this way, how you contribute to conflict, you can work on having a more fulfilling relationship. So self-awareness is the key
Yeah.
to all of these other 3 areas. It's required for authenticity, it's required for emotional currency, and it's required for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. It sure is.
So with that, we are out of time. We probably have about like 30 seconds left, if that. So one of the things that we came up with, I'm very big on acronyms. Okay. So we have these 4 areas, and me and Deanna were like, okay, we got to play around with this a little bit. Like, this has to be easier to remember. How can people remember this, right? So the acronym that we came up with is SAFE. So the next time someone asks you the question, what does relationship fulfillment look like? You're going to say safe. It has to be safe. Absolutely, right? Why not? Yes, literally, it needs to be safe physically, emotionally, verbally, financially, the whole 9 yard, right? But SAFE stands for self-awareness, honoring authenticity, forgiveness, and emotional currency. Okay. So with that, guys, thank you so much for all of you that joined us today. I hope you found this information to be very, very helpful. Please connect with me and Deanna online, LinkedIn. I am also streaming on my YouTube channel, which is Umid Center for HR, like relationship healing. Okay. Also on Instagram and LinkedIn. So we will be back every Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Central Time. Send us any topics you may want specifically for us to discuss, and we will see you next month. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.